You were taught what good foods were and what bad foods were and what foods that we should avoid. And it tainted our relationship to food because we would look at a food and we'd eat it and we'd see our blood sugar go up, or we'd feel not the best, or, we'd be sitting down at a meal and someone would make a comment of, oh, are you sure you can have that? Are you sure you're allowed to eat that?
Welcome to the Reclaim Your Rise podcast. My name is Lauren Bongiorno, nationally board certified health coach and founder and CEO of Risely Health, where we help people and families impacted by type 1 diabetes take ownership over their lives so that they can transform with more freedom and confidence. Everyone has a different reason to be here. You might be seeking knowledge, support, or community, but at your core, I know that you long for something deeper. You're here for transformation. And that's what the Reclaim Your Rise podcast is all about. A quick reminder before we start the show that nothing you hear on the Reclaim Your Rise podcast should be a substitute for personalized professional medical advice. Please always consult your physician or other medical professional before making any changes to your diet, insulin dosages, or healthcare plan. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Reclaim Your Rise show. So I have Elizabeth DiDonato here with me today, and you are going to love her and get so much nutrition knowledge out of this episode. If you're subscribed to the Risely newsletter that we send out every Tuesday, Elizabeth's name may look familiar to you because she is Risely's newest registered dietitian nutritionist coach that has joined our team this year, and we had first shared about it in the newsletter a few weeks back, but she's already started working with clients, and we are so grateful to have her as part of the team. Now, in this episode, Elizabeth and I talk about a lot, including gut health and relationship to food and holistic healing through food, living with multiple autoimmune conditions. Is intermittent fasting good or bad? Is it possible to intuitively eat as a person with diabetes, or do we have to count carbs all the time? Tips for snacking and blood sugars, and so much more that probably requires a part 2. So before we dive in, just a little bit more background on Elizabeth. As I mentioned, she is a registered dietitian nutritionist, and it was her own healing journey that really led her to this professional path. Elizabeth was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes when she was 9 years old, and in addition to type 1 diabetes, Elizabeth has battled a handful of chronic illnesses, including multiple sclerosis, PCOS, Lyme disease, and eczema. She has worked with countless practitioners and healers to better understand her body's ability to heal and is now providing that support to others. Elizabeth believes in a whole body wellness approach, which emphasizes a connection of mind, body, and soul. And in her years of experience coaching over 100 clients, just even before joining the Risely coaching team, Elizabeth has grown particularly skilled and passionate about helping people overcome challenges with nutrition and mindset, exercise, hormones, sleep patterns, relationship to food, gut health, autoimmune disorders, and behavioral health. When Elizabeth is not coaching or supporting clients on their health journeys, she loves cooking, skiing, exploring new places, meditation, and working out. She is in Stamford, Connecticut with her corgi. So if you are in that area, you can keep an eye out for Elizabeth. But without further ado, help me welcome her to the show, and let's rise. Elizabeth, I'm so happy that we are here right now recording this. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here too.
When I shared on Instagram that we would be recording this episode, everyone was flooding with questions and interest. And I mean, obviously type 1 diabetes and nutrition is a hot topic, but this is your hard launch. We're hard launching you as Risely's dietitian and coach. How does it feel to be in that position?
Feels so good. It's truly an honor to be here. I've personally been battling working with diabetes for so long, and this just fell perfectly into place. And so I'm super grateful to be here. I'm so excited to go down this path with everyone at Risely, the whole team, and all of you listening and joining in from all different parts of the world.
Absolutely. I know we've had some discussions internally for, past couple months of all right, what are the check boxes that this dietitian has to check? And you just fell from the sky, and we were oh my gosh, checks every box and just so aligned. And I think that I shared this with you, just throughout the process of you coming onto the team. But there are so many dietitians that are very, I don't know if clinical is the right word, or very just like numbers oriented or food plan oriented, where there's like no give or take in terms of like the whole person, kind of like the whole person approach. And that's something that I really, really appreciate about your outlook. And I'm curious, like, I just can't wait to dive into your story and for everybody to learn about you and like how you got to, where you are today, and talk about all the knowledge that you have, because it is so much. So I'm going to ask you the anchor question that everybody answers to kick off the episode, which is, can you share a story of a time that you've reclaimed your rise with type 1 diabetes? So a time where you really felt like diabetes is a challenge that I can, conquer, or it has purpose in my life. Is there anything that comes to mind for you?
Yes. So there are tons of things that come to mind, but one thing specifically is I was actually diagnosed with type 1 when I was 9. So I've had it for just about 19 years now. And my entire childhood growing up, I found this sense of embarrassment around type 1 diabetes. And I actually, last night was our kickoff meeting for the DCB, the January DCB, which was super exciting to be there. And I noticed this theme come up a lot for the participants who wanted to, get rid of this limiting belief, which was embarrassment around type 1. And so I really empathize with them on that, because that was something I dealt with for a long time. And a story that pops into mind is my family and I went to the Grand Cayman Islands years ago. And it was right at the beginning of when I was wearing the Dexcom G5, I believe I started with. And I was very embarrassed about it, like just walking around in a bathing suit. So I would cover it. I'd wear like high waisted shorts or like a sarong or things like that. And then one day I really just was over the tan lines I was getting. And I was like, I'm just gonna show it off. I'm just going to wear it and see what happens. And I'm not exaggerating. 5 people came up to me and thanked me for walking around with confidence, wearing my Dexcom, and said, I also have diabetes, either type 1 or type 2. I wear a continuous glucose monitor. And this just gave me the confidence that I needed to remind me that I'm not alone in this. And that just made such a difference in my own self confidence and also the path that I was on, because I was already in the phase of getting into grad school, and we'll talk about my whole story there. But that just really helped anchor me down and realize that I can reclaim my rise and show up with confidence and not care what other people think, because there's a lot of people out there just like me and just like us. And so that is my story.
Thank you for sharing. I'm curious to know, a lot of the people, and even my own journey as well, that have this relationship to showing the devices, right? And this shame, it also comes from a comfortability of being in your own body. And with that often comes, and the acceptance of just diabetes and the tech and all those things. And with that often comes relationship to food challenges as an extension of the acceptance of your body, and maybe not being happy and trying to control through, another way. And obviously with diabetes, it's so central and so focused on food. Was that part of your journey as well? And in what ways, if so, did that show up for you?
It was absolutely a huge part of my journey. As most people probably had the same experience growing up, as a 9-year-old and going to the endocrinologist and then having to go to the either certified diabetes educator or nutritionist. You were taught what good foods were and what bad foods were and what foods that we should avoid and what free foods are. And all of these things just got ingrained in our memory. And it tainted our relationship to food, because we would look at a food and we'd eat it and we'd see our blood sugar go up, or we'd feel not the best, or, we'd be sitting down at a meal and someone would make a comment of, oh, are you sure you can have that? Are you sure you're allowed to eat that? All of these little things just start to get embedded in our memory, which again taints that relationship to food, which is something I absolutely struggled with. And I do find this recurring theme come up a lot in other type 1 diabetes individuals that I work with or even just talk to. And so, yes, the relationship to food brings on another layer of feeling comfortable in your own skin, and then the relationship to body image too. Because when you find the foods that maybe you are told you shouldn't eat, and then how that makes your body feel, and so on and so forth. And there's just tons of layers there that really dive deep and, sit as trauma, which is a big reason why I am here and decided to become a dietitian because I think that education is such an important piece in diabetes management and just health and wellness in general. So that piece is huge.
23 years ago when I was diagnosed, I asked my mom this on the episode that she came on, when we just, like, on the 23rd anniversary of me getting diagnosed recently. But she had said, I don't remember there being any talk around like relationship to food, or she was like, in my mind, I wasn't even thinking about that being a potential, issue for you. And that was 23 years ago. So I would think that we've made progress in the last 2 decades, not so much on, like, I guess, like the parents and the caregivers, but more as like the system as a whole of saying, hey, like, we want to talk instead about like good foods and bad foods, about this is a, an easier to bolus for food or more challenging to bolus for food. That's the language we use at, at Risley. But have you seen progress from your, years you've been in school to become a dietitian in the way that you are taught to talk to people with diabetes about food?
I inter I interned at a few different places, and one of the internship opportunities that I had was actually at an outpatient diabetes clinic, mainly working with type 2 diabetes. And similar to what you mentioned before about just dietitians in general, of how it is extremely clinical and very number and data driven. And so it was very narrow minded of this is how we approach diabetes care. This is what your A1C is. This is what your blood sugars look like over time. This is the specific diet that you should be on, aka low carb, high protein, all of that stuff. And I would love to answer that question and say I've seen improvement, but not so much in the space that we tend to get our care, which is more in a clinical setting. More in the integrative and functional setting, I have seen a significant improvement, which is why that is the path that I wanted to go down and why I was so driven to Risley because it does focus on the whole person, the holistic approach of how there's so much more to us as human beings other than just our A1C or our, average blood glucose over a 3-day period of time and things like that.
Right. Or even just the knowledge that, hey, when you have a sprouted piece of bread that's 15 carbs, that is different than having a 15-gram carb of, this bread that has cane sugar in it and this, and this. Like, that to me, I didn't learn until college, until I found this like love and interest in, just like nutrition and health. And I was like, wait, like, this is wild. Like, why has nobody taught me that like all carbs aren't like made the same, which seems so obvious on the surface, but just doesn't seem like an important piece of, diabetes management from like what we're being taught, like from the, standpoint of like, here are the most important things that people with diabetes need to know. What, Elizabeth, about your journey with food, like, where was the turning point for you in finding either more of that education or more of that understanding in relationship to your diabetes?
In college, I decided to go vegan. It was not so much from a health standpoint, it was more for just like the environment and animals and things like that and the people I was surrounded with. I just decided to try a vegan diet and I noticed a significant improvement in my numbers actually. And that made me want to take a deeper dive in understanding what food could do for my body. Granted, before I was vegan, I was eating very like processed foods and very bland colored foods, not very colorful and things like that, which is something we can absolutely talk more about. But I noticed that positive improvement. And so I took the deeper dive. And in college, I originally wanted to go to school to become a physical therapist. And very quickly decided this is not the path for me. I feel so passionate about food and how food is improving my own health and wellness and all of that. And everyone I talked to did not see that connection, just like you mentioned of, all carbs are equal, but they're not. There's so many layers to understanding what might feel better for you and what might feel better for your blood sugar and all of that. And so I really wanted to go down that path, which is kind of that turning point for me was that connection.
And how long did you stay vegan for? And like, was that also Was that like realization something that also allowed you to say, all right, I'm not going to be fully vegan, but this is going to be like plant-based is going to be like my primary part of my diet? And then what were the things that like you kind of added in, and like where are you now in terms of how you eat?
I was vegan for probably about 3.5-ish years, and I started dabbling with a few other autoimmune conditions at the time, and so I, again, started to recognize my own body and what my own body was trying to tell me, so really getting a little bit more in tune with my body, and that allowed me to truly listened to what I needed, which brought me to a phase of, introducing other forms of protein. So I first included fish and eggs back into my diet. And that was mainly because I was experiencing dry eyes and a little bit of hair loss and things like that, some hormone issues as well. And then just actually recently last year, I started introducing animal protein, so like poultry and red meat back into my diet, which I did not have for 9 plus years before that. So that was a big change for me, but it was mainly because I found I was fully dreaming about red meat, like, I was craving it so much, and that was a clear sign that my body was trying to give me of, "You're either lacking something or you desperately need this." So, it's come a long way for me to really trust and listen to my body, but it has made all the difference. But I think going back to the vegan diet, that was the best thing I could have done because it allowed me to introduce fruits and vegetables that I've never really had before, and that is so incredible for our gut microbiome and really healing that part because I was dealing with tons of gut issues in the past, and so really bringing that to the forefront of my healing made all the difference and really allowed me to learn so, so much about myself.
I definitely want to dive into gut health with you in a second, but before we do, you said something so powerful, which reading between the lines, really what you said was, I know that the vegan diet was really beneficial for my blood sugars, but it wasn't beneficial for me all across the board. And when we get questions, constantly about what is the best diet for people with diabetes, I mean, that is why some of the top selling books in the diabetes category are all like, this diet, the thing that will help you finally improve your blood sugars and lose weight, or this diet, like they're all different diets. And it's just like, you really, really have to pick pieces, I find, of different things that work for you. Like for me, I've been a pescatarian I went through vegan stages as well, but I've been a pescatarian for 13 years. So I haven't had any land meat in that long. And I feel like this is like my confessional, my coming out, but I recently added bone broth in. And it was such a like mind screw because I'm like, what does this mean? Does this mean that like I don't love animals anymore? Does this mean that like I am not like pescatarian?
That's exactly how I started.
Right. I was just like, it's labels. But if you just look at the data of just the overall health and nutrients and, all of those things, I just felt intuitively called to do it. And, that's like the first step I've taken. And I feel good with that right now. Like, who knows what will happen in the future. But all to say, I think it's really important not to box yourself into like a label, because then you miss out on like asking yourself like, well, what's the blueprint for my body that's going to work? Because there's also like so many diets that are like, high carb, low fat, fully vegan, and it's like the people who are doing that, like maybe it works great for their body, but like I don't know for the majority of people if that works, especially with diabetes, like sustainably.
I cannot agree more with everything you just mentioned. And I think if you listening could take one thing from this entire conversation, it's that nutrition is so incredibly individual, so incredibly personal, and you really have to trust what works best for your body. I was also in the exact same boat. I labeled myself as a vegan. I was called a vegan. Like it fully became who I was. Similar to being a type 1 diabetic, like that just was who I was to so many people. And when you can get away from that label and just listen to you and just like bring up your authenticity of just you as a person, that you're a human being, you can really listen and see that your body does develop or evolve over time. And right now, a vegan diet or a plant based diet might be best suitable for you in this state. but that doesn't mean in 2, 5, 10 years from now, it's going to be the best thing for you then. So it's all about being open minded and just allowing yourself to evolve with food, um, with people, with relationships, with so many other things. It it helps a lot, and it's part of the healing journey is getting rid of that label.
And truthfully, I think that's what frustrates people in a way where they're like, just
Uh-huh.
tell me what to do, tell me what to eat, and
Uh-huh.
I'll follow the plan. And instead of it being frustrated, like being on the other side of it now for me personally, because I used to be one of those people, I'm like, get excited about it because there's like a liberation that comes when you don't have to follow anybody else's plan and you don't have to look at like, okay, like, did I check this box today of this plan that somebody made? And it really like, I would encourage everyone to really think about how do I bring things into my life that will help me move closer to a place of trust with my body and like intuition, because our bodies are so smart, they're so intelligent. We just oftentimes we have a lot of external noise that's happening, and we don't have the space to practice that and strengthen that muscle of intuition and what works best. With that, you mentioned colorful food, and I also think on one hand, in when we're talking about just like eating for better blood sugars, it's also eating for gut health. And there's plenty of people who can eat chicken fingers all day and have like perfectly straight blood sugar numbers, but that doesn't mean it's supporting their overall health. So talking about colorful food and then also moving into gut health, like why is it important to consider holistically everything, health from all angles instead of just health around blood sugar specifically?
So we are one body, right? And so everything is connected rather than thinking of it as just focusing on your pancreas or just focusing on your insulin or just focusing on your heart health or just focusing on your thyroid, whatever it is. We forget that there are other things that play a big role in the optimization of that organ or that system, right? We're one big system. And so understanding that our blood sugars are going to influence our hormones, and then our hormones are going to influence our thyroid, and then our thyroid's going to influence our metabolism, and like so on and so forth. And so this is a big reason why I've stepped into the title of like a holistic dietitian, because it is a whole body approach, and it's more than just the system, like the more systemic approach. And when it comes to gut health, which is definitely a trending topic nowadays. So I do tread this lightly because there are tons of noise out there between Instagram, TikTok, all that. There's a lot of noise and around the buzzword gut health, but ultimately, gut health is our second brain. So, like, our gut is our second brain, and there is this bidirectional communication way between our gut and our brain, which means when one is a little bit off, it's going to impact the other. So, meaning our gut, if it's a little bit off, it could impact our mood or the neurotransmitters getting sent through our brain, our mental health, so on and so forth. And when our brain isn't fully supported, then that's going to impact our gut health. So it's super important to prioritize our gut health because our gut is made up of billions and trillions of different microorganisms that really dictate the course of health in our body, between our immune system, between our digestive health, and so on and so forth, our hormones. It really comes from having a diverse microorganism population in our gut, which brings me to the colorful vegetable question and colorful fruits, because that is phytonutrients. So, phyto meaning plant nutrients, so plant nutrients. And the different colors actually give off a different nutrient in the fruit or vegetable, and that will enter the body. And think of it as like specific jobs that these phytonutrients have. And if you're not getting enough red fruits and vegetables, that job that that specific phytonutrient has to do does not get done, which means we want to try to eat the rainbow and try to incorporate multiple different colors in our day in and day out. Something I run into a lot is people getting stuck on like salads or sides when it comes to dinners and things like that. and maybe we just have broccoli or maybe we just have cauliflower, but we're forgetting that there are so many other colors that we can incorporate. And that's one of the easiest things to start supporting our gut microbiome is simply just start to eat the rainbow.
Okay, I have to ask you about this because we still haven't followed up. We were on a team call last week and you were talking about how much you love carrot juice. And I was blown away because when I started juicing, I just got a new juicer last year, but it was like 11, 12 years I had that juicer. When I first got it, the first thing I juiced was carrots because I was like, carrots are so sweet. Like I'm sure like the vibrant color, it's going to be great. I've never in my life seen my blood sugar spike so fast than when I had carrot juice. And it's because, and maybe you can explain this. I'll let you explain it, but like what juicing does to the fiber and then, why that might have happened for me. And this was, so long ago. I really didn't know how to like manage my blood sugars. Maybe I wasn't pre-bolusing, things like that. But what's up with the carrot juice?
So many layers to that question. But first, carrot juice is incredible. Carrots are extremely beneficial for hormone health. And so, for me specifically, I have PCOS. So, I have been actively trying to rebalance my hormones after getting off of hormonal birth control. I have been really focusing on holistic healing and balancing my hormones and just my menstrual cycle and everything like that. So carrot juice has become such a staple in my routine. And I notice such a positive improvement with my hormones. However, on the blood sugar part, yes, carrot juice is extremely high glycemic. And so it is something that I also had to learn really quick that I need to give myself insulin for this. And I've been juicing for about 3 years now, and it's made such a difference in my health, in my digestion, in my gut health, in my hormone health, in my blood sugars as well, actually. And when you juice something, you're getting rid of the fiber, which is something you just mentioned. And when you eat a whole fruit or vegetable, you have that fiber piece in it. And fiber on is a piece of a carbohydrate, and carbohydrates are also fruits and vegetables that is not naturally digested in the body. So we can't actually break down fiber, which is why it's super beneficial for blood sugar stabilization because I like to think of it as a conveyor belt. You eat a meal that is has zero fiber in it. It's just going to go straight through the conveyor belt, which means it's going to, if it's, let's say, a bowl of semolina pasta, it's just going to go straight through and it's going to spike our blood sugar really quickly. And then we're going to go about our day. If we eat a big cruciferous vegetable salad before the semolina bowl of pasta, then we're going to have this slow down of the conveyor belt because our stomach and our digestive system is actively trying to break down the fiber in the vegetables to then slowly release the sugar and glucose from the pasta.
Yes, and what I love about it too is if you think about like the way that we as humans like started to eat, and maybe I wouldn't say as humans, like it doesn't go back that far, but like the dinner table, right? Like often there's a salad bowl that is the first thing you're eating before you remove that and put everything else on your plate. So it's it's us over time that changes the order of things, or like, hey, we're just not going to put a salad bowl on the table today, and we're just going to go straight to the pasta. But that's something that absolutely helps with blood sugars. And to the point about juicing, I notice for everything, for skin, for hair, for energy, for mood, for blood sugars, like having a juice a few times a week, like I make it homemade. I'll do just celery, cucumber, ginger, lemon, and sometimes fennel. And it's all low glycemic ingredients. So I only need to bolus 10 carbs for it compared to like carrots, which are the root vegetable that have natural sugars in them that, will make me need maybe a ton more insulin, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I'll save those sometimes for like if my blood sugar is going low, I'll have like beet juice or carrots in it, and I love that as a I call them like a twofer, where it's like two things that kind of bring up your blood, like it brings your blood sugar up and it's giving you these nutrients. So going back to gut health, there's a correlation that you and I were talking about before we pressed record on like even just how like there's been a lot of research on having an imbalanced gut leading to cause type 1 diabetes, or trigger your immune system to attack itself. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
There have been a lot of studies recently done on understanding the gut microbiome and the impermeability, so like the leaky gut, the walls of your gut microbiome, and how that can impact or slow down your immune system function. And when we have a lower immune system, we know that we can have autoimmune conditions happen. It's in the word. So when we go through all of like when I go through all of the research, I notice that individuals who do have some gut issues, whether it's low permeability or leaky gut or, just digestive issues in general, and this can come from lots of different things, which I can go on a tangent about. But unfortunately, our food system can sometimes create these digestive issues and like what it is that we are consuming and how that can impact our digestion. Stress is a big, big piece too that can impact our digestion. So, all of that can lower our gut permeability, which can then potentially lead to um, increase autoimmune risk. And one piece to just understand when it comes to autoimmune conditions is that there's a reason why when you get diagnosed with something like type 1 diabetes or, hypothyroidism or things like that, or Hashimoto's, you tend to get tested for all of the other ones because when you start to treat the one that you were diagnosed with, like now that we're treating our diabetes with insulin and long acting, short acting, all of that stuff. If we don't treat the root cause of why the immune system was attacked in the first place by ourselves, then it's just going to go and attack the next organ, which means it might go attack the thyroid or the kidney or the liver, things like that. And it's just going to go and start to snowball effect that way. Um, but in general, the idea of having a leaky gut is absolutely a big root cause issue that I find come up a lot with a lot of individuals who are living with something like type 1.
So, question for you. When you talked about stress, and I think stress is one that is, oh, man, that comes up so much for Risley, like the coaching members that we work with, because it's like there's this acute stress that can be happening where it's like, oh my gosh, you're rushing late to go to work. And so you're running out the door and you see your blood sugar, go up. But then there's other stressors, which is like doing too much high intensity workouts or not getting enough sleep, or you're sleeping but you're not going to bed until 1 o'clock in the morning, and you're missing that like prime window of like going to bed at like 10, 11, before 12 o'clock. All those stressors that are kind of like impacting your gut health, which then in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, are also contributing to your insulin resistance. Is that how the connection works?
In summary, yes. Our So I like to think of it as like back as hunter gatherers, right? Like way, way, way back then. We Our bodies have developed this reaction to stressful situations where we needed to go out and find food. And maybe in that process, we ran into a saber-toothed tiger or a bear or something like that. And we had to do one of two things. We either had to fight that animal or run as far away as we possibly can from that animal. And we have this response now, fight or flight. And this fight or flight response is an acute stress response that our body has developed to keep us safe. However, fast forward to now 2024, we tend to find that majority of people stay in a chronic state of fight or flight. And this could either be from high intensity workouts that we're doing all the time and not having the right fuel to support that workout, or being in a stressful job or stressful relationship, or having past trauma, or really negative body image or things like that that can just create this state of chronic fight or flight, which makes it a lot harder for us to prioritize digestion because the opposite of fight or flight is rest and digest. And so when we are in this chronic state of fight or flight, we are not prioritizing rest, which means we're not getting good quality sleep to repair our cells and repair everything that's happened in the day, nor are we digesting properly. So there's that correlation there of when we're under high stress for a long period of time and not prioritizing getting our body into that rest and digest, we're going to see some gut issues come on.
Well, you said something about this is very specific, but to bring it back to food, how some people are not fueling themselves properly for certain workouts. And I think that with type 1 diabetes, there's this kind of just like unsaid thought process that a lot of us have, which is less is more. Like, oh, I'm going to go work out on an empty stomach because then it'll just, whether it's the calories or I don't have to give insulin and have insulin on board. And like, let's just try to limit and then, have a bigger breakfast after, whatever it may be. Can you give an example on like why, if there's anything that you can even just like expand beyond what you just shared, but like why having fuel before your workout could be beneficial for you, and it's not necessarily a bad thing to be like taking more insulin for it or having more carbs, and the goal doesn't always have to be less is more.
One of the first stress hormones that get released in our body when we wake up is cortisol. And if you are listening and you are living with type 1 diabetes, you know that cortisol will impact your blood sugar and it'll raise it. And so when we wake up early in the morning and we are working out, we're going to have this cortisol spike. And on top of that, we are putting our body under stress because we are exercising, right? We're pumping our heart faster, we're just breathing heavier, all of those things, which are going to increase our cortisol even more. And when we don't have food in our system, that could hurt our digestive tract. And so, one of the best things that we can do to support our digestion, support our hormones, because when we have this elevated cortisol, that can impact our hormone health as well. Then we see this negative long term reaction to working out really on an empty stomach, especially first thing in the morning. So, one of my biggest tips, especially when it comes to balancing blood sugar and balancing hormones, because those two are hand in hand, is having something easy to digest first thing in the morning and understanding how your body responds to certain workouts, right? We have two different types of workouts. We have aerobic and we have anaerobic. So we have more of the cardio based workouts and then more of the strength based workouts. And your body's going to respond differently in terms of blood sugar based on the type of workout that you're doing. And so understanding what type of workout you're doing and what snack or what pre-workout meal you can have first thing is going to be super, super important. And one of the best things that you can do is make sure it's easy to digest so you don't feel that uncomfortable fullness and just like not being able to perform at your best and all of those things.
Wait, you were talking and it made me think about something that we did. I put a box on Instagram that said, "Is there any questions?" And and we're going to answer some of them at the end, but this is like a topic that I think is more than just a direct answer to a question. I'm curious to know your thoughts. Intermittent fasting. Like, we see so many people who they'll intermittent fast and then their blood sugars every day at like 12 o'clock after their lunch will spike so much. And they're like, I don't understand, like, no matter how much insulin I'm giving, like, my blood sugar is spiking after my lunchtime. And then through journaling and through, we're just working with them, we're like, hey, like, let's just experiment. Let's see what happens when you add in a protein, two hard boiled eggs and like an apple or whatever it is in the morning time. And then all of a sudden, they have that at 9 o'clock, and then at 12 o'clock, they no longer have that spike afterwards. So I'm curious to hear about your thoughts on intermittent fasting.
Intermittent fasting is another buzzword in the media, in just diet culture in general. And there is absolutely benefit to intermittent fasting. However, in all of the research and everything else done, it tends to be more beneficial for males and postmenopausal women. When you are in your fertility ages and you are a woman, just trying to intermittent fast, that's where we can run into some issues, especially hormone related and blood sugar related and things like that, because again, those two are very connected. So we tend to see a positive correlation between intermittent fasting in men and in postmenopausal women. However, again, it's not something that works for everybody. So it's something people will test and see how they react to it. But in general, especially when you're in those fertility ages, you really want to prioritize fueling your body all the time rather than giving yourself like 6, 8, sometimes even 10 hours without eating anything.
Absolutely. Well, I know we're going to do a spin-off secondary episode on weight loss, and we can talk more about that there. But I just think it's also, it frustrates me so much that people spend time and energy trying to do something that isn't necessarily like they think in their minds it's going to work, but it doesn't work. Like to lose weight, okay, clearly, like an obvious thing is to just intermittent fast and not eat before this time or not eat after that time. And it's like, is that sustainable? A. B, is it actually adding more stress to your body, especially to your point if you're a female? And C, like, could you actually achieve the results that you want with like more ease and being kinder to your body and like learning to work with your body instead of forcing it? Like I'm very big into like like I've learned over the years, it's about like flow, not force. And it's not supposed to feel so hard. So with all that being said, questions. Can we do a little Q&A where I answer some questions that people sent in? All right, I'll shoot some ones that are like a little bit longer and then other ones that are more just kind of like direct answers. Okay, first question is about probiotics. Is this something that we should be taking daily? What are your thoughts on probiotics, prebiotics?
Probiotics and prebiotics are both very heavily talked about in the media. And I think we have to be extra careful with that because unfortunately, with things like supplements that you would just take over the counter, they are not FDA approved. So we don't know exactly 100% what is in those probiotics. And if it says what's in it, there could still be something else because, again, they're not approved. So you always want to make sure you are working with a healthcare professional to really understand what is in your specific gut microbiome and how you need to supplement for that. And what high quality, like, are they triple tested, third party approved, things like that. Another thing I always suggest when it comes to taking pro and prebiotics is doing a stool test. So if you've never had a stool test done, that is a really great way to understand what species, what pathogens are living in your gut and what you might be deficient in or what you might have too much of. And so just getting that baseline test is always helpful to just like a good rule of thumb when it comes to understanding your gut health. And you can actually naturally get pro and prebiotics from foods. So prebiotics are going to be heavily in like your cruciferous veggies and certain types of fruits and things like that. And then probiotics you're going to find in all of your fermented foods. So whether that's yogurt or kimchi or sauerkraut or things like that, you're going to find those naturally. So if you baseline would be get the stool test. Second would be understanding what your gut microbiome is consistent of. And then if your body can handle taking those pre and probiotics naturally, then go that route. If not, make sure you work with a healthcare professional to understand what specific pro and prebiotic you should be taking.
Yes, I was like not letting this episode end without talking about like sauerkraut and all of those fermented things because that is something that I truly has helped me with my own gut health and it's like an easy thing to just add into your day. Okay, next question. Everyone talks about intuitive eating. Is that possible to do with type 1 diabetes?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it is. However, with intuitive eating, you want to make sure you are approaching it healthfully, rather than just listening to your body and saying, I'm craving a cheeseburger. I'm going to go have a cheeseburger. Or I'm craving a donut. I'm going to go have a donut. Or I'm craving just water. I'm going to have that. Like, you want to approach it in a way where you're really learning your hunger and fullness cues and you really understand what is going to make your body feel the best and be able to perform the way that you want it to. And so, again, something like intuitive eating, especially if you don't have the best relationship with food, or you're struggling with that relationship, you want to make sure you're either reaching out and talking to somebody or doing more research to understand that it is a little bit of a longer journey to master intuitive eating and mindfulness. But I do think it is absolutely something that someone with type 1 diabetes can be able to do and be capable of.
Right. And I'm imagining the person asking this as well is thinking, okay, my blood sugar is 250. I'm high, but I really, would love pizza right now. That is the answer to, is my body craving pizza? Is yes, but is this going to benefit my body right now and then send me into a high blood sugar? The answer would probably be no. But for me, and I agree to your point about intuitive eating being a journey, like I would say I'm 100% an intuitive eater now, and that's like my relationship to food. But like it took a while to get to that place. And I think for me, the difference in those two things is the how do I say this? It's like it's coming from the choice is coming from an empowered place instead of a place of I can't have, right? It's like, well, I can't have that because of, this reason versus actually, you know what? That's not going to serve me right now. Love pizza. That sounds amazing. Let me have this maybe later on today or tomorrow. Or like I remember this one video I made on Instagram on people. I had leftover pizza in the fridge and it was like Monday afternoon, and that, I had it from Sunday. It was Monday afternoon. It was raining outside for whatever reason. Like rain is one of my triggers around, like I want comfort food during that, like that, when it rains. And my mind said, it was like, do you want pizza? And the answer was, yes, I want pizza, because of course, like 9 out of 10 times my answer to that is going to be yes. But then when I changed the question to, is this pizza going to serve you in this moment? Me looking at my calendar with like 3 more calls, 4 more calls left for the day and needing to be like feeling good, I was like, no, it doesn't serve me. And that I dictated that outcome because I changed the question that I was asking.
I fully agree with that, and that is where the mindset piece becomes huge when it comes to healing your relationship with food. When you can come from a place of empowerment rather than a place of judgment, it goes such a long way in your ability to fully trust your body and listen to your body rather than just say, "Oh, I'm craving all of these foods and I'm just going to have them because that's what my body wants." It's so different when you can just even change that word, that phrase ever so slightly goes such a long way.
Right. And I think the one thing that I'm really excited for type ones to work with you on in coaching is the creation of the space, right? That's where people struggle, is the space between feeling that feeling and then eating the food and then the regret after of, I don't feel good and my blood sugars are high. And it's like, that is such a cycle for so many people. And that's something that you're going to be able to, help type ones with. And I know you've been helping, your patients for years that haven't had type 1, but I'm you're going to find so much fulfillment as you start working with type 1s, because it's also that blood sugar impact as well. That's like the biggest piece, right? For people who don't have diabetes, yes, it's the guilt, yes, it's the I shouldn't have ate that, it's all of that, and that's, doesn't feel good in itself. But then we layer the blood sugar impact on it and it's just doubles down on how crummy, that decision felt. So like for that forgiving quick, and then the let's get proactive and figure out what the root of the cycle is. Okay, next question is, how do you quote unquote snack with diabetes? This is from Jessica. How do you snack with diabetes, or is it just always something that needs to be measured out? What's your intake on this input?
I think from a snacking standpoint, one of the biggest things, and really just meals in general, one of the biggest things to recognize is balancing the snack. So, what I mean by balancing is trying to create, at least in a snack, 2 different food groups, in a meal, at least 3 different food groups on your plate to help maximize blood sugar stabilization. So, food groups could be, starchy carbohydrates, non-starchy carbohydrates. Fiber could be added into that too, dietary fats, proteins, etc. And so when we can look at a snack that way, right? If you really want a banana, let's say as a snack, what can you add to that banana to just help with your blood sugars and all of that? Maybe you add some almond butter, maybe you add a handful of trail mix, maybe you know, throw some chia seeds on top of the banana, things like that to just help with blood sugar stabilization in general. From a measuring standpoint, I personally don't really measure foods. I did that a lot in the past and I don't do it anymore, but I will recognize what, like, one banana, whether it's a small, medium, or large banana, what that's going to do to me, how I need to give myself insulin for that, and when I add, a scoop of almond butter, 2 scoops of almond butter, how that's going to impact me as well. I think the rule of thumb when it comes to snacking is just trying to make it balanced rather than just having one food group, try to have at least two.
Yeah. And I think it also comes from just like small decisions, right? Like I last night was just like craving, I was like, I want some popcorn. And instead of taking the whole entire Costco sized bag of popcorn into the den while my husband and I were watching a show, like that, that becomes more mindless and less intentional. It's like, let's intentionally put the popcorn into the bowl and then put the popcorn bag away and then go ahead and walk into the living room, like, and enjoy it and be like just intentional about it, because I think, that's like something that a lot of people say is like, I wish I could just sit down and like, have a breakup with somebody and then just like eat a box of chocolates with, not having to worry about what it's going to do to my blood sugars. And it's like, I think that that really is one of the challenging things, is the mindless, just like indulgence in the food. You don't necessarily have to measure it out, but being aware of kind of like the portion and, of course, if you see yourself going high, like giving yourself a little bit more insulin, and, it's an art and a science.
Exactly. And I also think the longer you have it, the the easier it is for you to look at something and be like, "Okay, I know at least roughly what that's gonna like, how many carbs that's gonna be and how much insulin I have to give myself and all of that." But another piece I just wanna add to what you mentioned of, like, giving yourself the portion is and then putting it away. You can still, if you're still hungry, go back and get more. Like, that doesn't mean that's the only portion that you have to have. If you are still hungry after you eat that portion, you can go out and get more. And that's where you can recognize the hunger and fullness and really learn that. And that's where the intuitive eating comes into play.
Oh yeah, I did that last night. I 100% did that. I went back there. I'm like a second bowl, of course.
We all
Um,
do that.
Yeah, but I love it's like just being intentional at the base, and just like it's intentionality at all steps along the way, and like really like having a relationship with yourself instead of also just like numbing your body with food and not thinking through it. I think that's the piece. Okay, we have like so many questions submitted, but I think this episode can go on forever, that we are going to have you back a second time, a third time, as many times as the people want to hear from you. So many questions, so much more we can talk about, Elizabeth, but I want you to leave us with like, what are you most looking forward to supporting people with who are going to potentially come through Risely coaching and working with you as their dietitian coach?
I feel like it's so hard to just narrow it down to one. But one thing that is just keeps coming up for me is the empowerment piece and bringing that empowerment to what we've been taught for so long of judging ourselves for the foods that we eat and judging ourselves for how our blood sugars respond to certain foods, but actually using the food as a form of medicine and as a form of healing and leaning on the food and realizing that it does have so many other incredible benefits to our body and not being scared of something like carrot juice or something like, a big bowl of potatoes, but instead recognizing that those foods are incredibly healing for our gut, for our hormones, for all the other functions in our body, and that we can feel empowered to make these decisions and not be scared of how our blood sugar is going to respond to it because we have all of the tools necessary to just thrive in that sense. So I'm really excited to work with people on that and have them recognize their limitless potential.
Yes, to use some Risely language. I love it.
Yes.
Elizabeth, thank you so much for spending time with us today. For anyone listening who is listening to this saying, I really, really would love to work with Elizabeth, or, learn more about my relationship to food or my gut health and get support on these things, we'll put a link in the show notes where you can apply for coaching, and that will allow you to get on a call with our team. And you could also mention that you're interested in working with Elizabeth. We'll be back, and let us know what you want to, like, more questions you have, other topics you'd be interested to hear. But we are planning for the next one to do one on body image and weight loss. And that's all. We will see you all next week. And thank you again, Elizabeth.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for being here with me today and listening to this episode of Reclaim Your Rise. To let us know that the episodes we're putting out are impactful, and to help us get our street cred up and let everyone else know that this is something worthy of their time to listen to, please leave a rating and review on our Apple Podcast, send the show to other people impacted by T1D or maybe even your doctor, and share it on social media tagging at Risely Health and at Lauren_Bongiorno. New episodes of Reclaim Your Rise come out every single Tuesday, so make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so that you never miss a beat. Thanks again for listening, and as always, remember, diabetes is a challenge that we did not choose, but one that we can rise above.